Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are doing well amid COVID 19. Before I begin my presentation this morning, I would like to thank the member of the organizing committee at GVISH Amravati for providing me an opportunity to present my research work in the area of scholarship of teaching and the learning. Especially, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. Satish Malode, a friend of mine for more than 30 years. We used to be at the university's hostel and we used to be the neighboring roommates. So it has been pleasure to know some of you faculty member like Dr. Patil, Dr. Sangita Dongre. Last night we spoke on the virtual presentations and also other faculty member. So throughout my academic life, I have maintained a very diverse research portfolio. As a PhD student at the University of Bath in England, I have investigated the effects of the various stresses on the immune systems. Moving on to my first postdoctoral fellowship at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, where I have investigated the neurohormonal stimulation of the immune system using the growth hormone and the prolactin. When I moved to Canada in 1998, my second postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Alberta, I was engaged in looking at the neuroendocrine regulation of the appetite and also the food intake by using the number of the neuropeptide in the brain. And so, even though I kept my research life active, but for the last 5 to 6 years, since I moved to the University of the McEwen or McEwen University in my hometown in Edmonton, I have engaged in the scholarship of teaching and the learning, particularly in the what you call the knowledge retention area of the teaching research. So, everyone, this morning I would like to present some of the data that I have collected over the last 5 years in the field of knowledge retention. Now, everyone, we know as a teaching faculty, apart from engaging ourselves in the research, sharing the hands in the administrations of your department or the university, we all have one common interest, and that is teaching. And so the teaching is very rewarding, it is satisfying, and we have developed a passion for it, right? We all want our student, we have one common passion that we all want our student to be successful in the course and the subject we teach them. We all want them to do better in their academic performance. We all want them to be well equipped with the knowledge of our courses. And above all, we want them to acquire the knowledge. We want them to retain that knowledge and apply that knowledge in the future courses or in the future professions. I'm going to give you a couple of examples on this one. As a botany or the zoology student, he or she should be able to acquire the knowledge of the botany and the zoology in the first year and should be able to apply in her future courses or when working as the botanist or the zoologist or even given an opportunity to identify a species of the plant or the animal in the future. right? So we done the semester, we taught our courses, and we feel very happy at the end of the semester because all our students have passed and they have moved on to the first, second year, third year, or they finish the degree and move on to working in their field. But did we ever wonder the course or the subject we taught, how much knowledge of that course or subject our students have gained in the first year? Did we ever even wonder when we actually teach a particular chapter in the semester, did we ever try to assess how much knowledge they have gained just few days earlier or within the semester, right? And so there is a real problem of receiving or acquiring the knowledge of the courses and also retaining and applying that knowledge to the future courses. And this is actually one of the most the serious problem in the academic institution. Now, this is also true for the biosciences and the life sciences. So, biosciences include anatomy, physiology, microbiology, biochemistry, and the pathophysiology. And of course, the life sciences that all you teach include the biology, botany, zoology, biochemistry, maybe, and other, life sciences courses, right? So, now, next thing I wanted to talk about is that based on the numerous research findings, the medical and the allied health refers to the occupational therapy, physiotherapy, chiropractics, and also the dentistry and the physical education, right? So, based on the numerous research findings, medical and the allied health student reported a growing concern over the loss of the knowledge in their second or the third year of the medicine or the medical school. In fact, these students actually expressed the concern over the loss of the knowledge over the time and also over the years of their medical school. In fact, 92% medical students in the second or the third year felt that the anatomy knowledge was very, very helpful for them to understand the structure and the function of the body. But only 14% medical students felt confident about their knowledge in their final year of the medicine. So, looking at these couple of examples for last few minutes, overall conclusion is that our students in the biosciences and the life sciences have a difficulty not only to acquire the enough knowledge of their course or subject, but also retain that knowledge over the year and apply it to their profession or to their actually future years of the degree program. So, looking at this one, this morning I like to present some of the data on the knowledge retention in the nursing student taking the anatomy and the physiology with me. And so, therefore, the objective of my studies this morning are I wanted to look at the anatomical knowledge acquisition, its retention, and the application in the second year of the nursing. Then, by looking at the level of the loss of the knowledge or the difficulty in retaining, I wanted to look at the what are the compounding impact factor that actually impact the teaching and the learning of the anatomy in the second year nursing students, right? And finally, by knowing the potential gap, then I wanted to define or basically come up with a interventional strategy that will improve their knowledge acquisition, their knowledge transfer and application in the future nursing program or the program, right? All right. Now, as usual, when it comes to the assessment of the knowledge in the first year or second, third, or the fourth year of the degree program, you have to come up with uh, the method of evaluating the knowledge. And so, one of the most commonly and very popular method of knowledge assessment that has been widely used in universities and the colleges worldwide is actually called the Kahoot. And the Kahoot is, next slide will show, the Kahoot is online gaming quiz platform, meaning that as you can see in this figure, by creating login information on the online as a kahoot.com, as a teaching faculty, you can develop multiple choice questions into the Kahoot. And when you go in the classroom, you can open your Kahoot quiz with the help of the Wi-Fi. And I'm sure every single classroom in India is equipped with the smart room, the projector, and the very well stable Wi-Fi connectivity. So by using the Wi-Fi, you can log in on your Kahoot account and open up the quiz. And I'm sure you would be announcing the quiz to your student earlier. So when the students come in the classroom and when you open the Kahoot quiz, they can actually, well, actually the Kahoot then generate the pin and the student can use that pin to log in on their computer or your Android phone. They don't have to have the login information. So once they open up the Kahoot quiz, which you have developed earlier, they can answer those questions. When they answer those questions, the results are immediately sent out to your email and you can collect the data and analyze the data to know how much overall the knowledge was acquired in your particular subject or the topic of your course, everyone. Now, there are a couple of advantages of this online gaming platform called the Kahoot. Number one, when the student log in, they don't have to use their real name. They can use the nickname. That way, they don't have to be embarrassed when they see their score in that particular Kahoot quiz. Number one. Number two, also, what I normally do, I reward my student by giving them chocolate or also candy when the first three students, achieve the highest score. So making this a method of knowledge assessment very, very enjoyable, fun, and at the end of the day, you also get to know overall where your class stands in terms of the knowledge acquisition of your topic or the chapter, in that scenario. Okay, so by using the Kahoot, I actually designed the first kind of the experiment where I wanted to assess the knowledge acquisition in the first year of anatomy class. Now, anatomy course includes the number of the organ systems, and there are 11 organ systems I actually use to assess for their knowledge acquisition. So 9 to 11 questions based on all those 11 organ systems were developed and delivered in the class using the Kahoot. And their class average in each chapter or the organ system was collected. Now, when my anatomy student finished the course, they move on to the second year, and in the second year they were registered in the health assessment course taught by Okay, so let's continue with the knowledge retention project. So, as I mentioned earlier, when the first year anatomy student pass their course and when they move on to their second year, the same number of the questions that were asked them in the first year were repeated in the second year, and their knowledge retention or the loss of the knowledge retention and the application was assessed in the second year. Okay? Now, the results from this data, the results from this experiment or project clearly indicate that the overall knowledge acquisition of anatomical knowledge acquisition in the first year was approximately 83%, which was significantly dropped down to the 54%, indicating that overall the anatomy student lost approximately 29% of their first year anatomical knowledge after 1 year or in the second year. Now, also, if they have lost 29% knowledge over the year, the good news is that they were also able to retain around 71% of their first year anatomical knowledge. Now let's look at the knowledge acquisition in each organ system. Now the data presented in this slide shows that there were organ specific knowledge acquisition, its retention and the application in the second year. For example, the lymphatic system, vascular system and the cranial system has the highest score in the first year nursing students. But the retention was the lowest, almost losing around 50% of their first year knowledge after 1 year. This indicates that the students were not able to remember much of their first year anatomical knowledge in the second year or 1 year after. On the other hand, if you look at the gastrointestinal, that's the digestive system, respiratory systems and the musculoskeletal system, their knowledge acquisition of these three systems was very low compared to the first three organ systems. But if you look at after 1 year, their retention was much more higher. Almost, if you look at here, they actually, or in other words, they actually lost around 20%. So in other words, they actually retain around 80% of their first year anatomical knowledge, meaning that the knowledge of the gastrointestinal, respiratory and the musculoskeletal system, the anatomy students were able to remember much of it after 1 year. And in the last, the integumentary system, nervous system, spatial senses and the genitourinary system, they had a fairly good knowledge retention after 1 year, only losing maybe 20% of their first year anatomical knowledge. Now looking at the overall conclusion from this graph or from this slide, it indicates that the knowledge retention was organ specific and varied from one organ to other. This is something you can also relate this kind of the project when you actually thinking to initiate your research in the teaching. So whatever course you teaching, whether it's a biology, zoology, or botany, you can use your chapters. So you deliver the Kahoot, or you make up the Kahoot on the basis of this chapter and deliver them in your class. Wait after 1 year, and when your student actually goes into the second year, talk to your colleague and allow him or her to deliver your first year Kahoot based on the chapter 2 your actually colleague in the second year or third year or fourth year. And that way you can actually find out, not only the level of the knowledge acquisition in the first year, but also how much they retain, how much they apply in their future classes. So this is something you can actually begin to explore in your own courses or in your own subject. Okay, now, so from the last two, graph and the table, it is concluded that the nursing student were not able to transfer and apply the first year anatomical knowledge after 1 year in the health assessment course. So from this experiment, we are wondering what makes some student to achieve or receive the highest score in some organ system than others. What makes some student to retain the highest knowledge retention in some organ system compared to the others. And that actually was a starting point to look at it, the number of the compounding factors that actually impact the teaching and the learning of the anatomy class. And this is also kind of an open options for you to, when you've done your knowledge retention studies of your subject, you can also look at the impacting factor. Now it is crucial because once you know what are the impact factor that actually impact the teaching and the learning of your course, you can design the targeted interventional strategy to improve, right? Now, as I mentioned earlier, now this is where the impact factor get complicated, because there is just not a single impact factor that actually alter or impact the teaching and the learning of anatomy or your subject. Now there's a huge list of those impacting factors which is out of the scope for me to cover, but some of those impacting factors that affect the teaching and the learning of the anatomy students are listed here. So inadequate time, not having the enough time to study the subject, can alter or impact their learning and the teaching. Class time is also depend upon how much class time the student get. More the class time, more they actually have a ability to learn. Attending the class also very useful because they have a direct interaction with the professor or the teaching faculty. Also using the textbook, so the students who actually come in the class, attend the class, and the thoroughly read through the textbook, they can benefit, in terms of their academic performance in that particular chapter or the course. Lab experience, if you have a lab attached to your course, of course lab experience also alter their academic performance. There are a number of the factors that also affect or impact the teaching and the learning of your course. Prioritization, how student organize his basically the classes. For example, if they're doing the 5 classes, that depend upon how much time he actually allowed each of the subject to actually teach, right? So the prioritization also help. Second thing also, if the students have a previous experience in their subject, that also help. um, self-efficacy, the study time and the what kind of the study skills the student incorporate in the course preparation, whether he uses internet, uses watch the YouTube video, do the Google search. All kind of the techniques can also skills can also help to basically or impact their teaching and the learning. Also, it also depend upon if the students come prepared in the classroom, and also when she or he finish that particular chapter, whether he goes back to the notes or the textbook and basically recall what he has learned in the classroom, that is also helpful. So those are the some of the factors that impact the teaching and the learning in the students. How about the factor that actually affect your teaching in the classroom? Now, the first and most important is the course organization. So how instructor or the teaching faculty organizes his course also alter or impact the teaching and the learning or his ability to teach his course. Methods of the delivery, how he actually able to deliver his course material, either just walking into the classroom and reading through the notes, or if he uses the technology by using the and uses the PowerPoint presentation, YouTube video, how you engage his students is all also impact his teaching ability. Instructional self-efficacy, the number of the resources, his own knowledge and his expertise can also impact his teaching ability. Um, Amount of the time he actually spent in front of the student, we call face-to-face time, can also impact his teaching style, the number of the strategy, how you engage your student in your class has a wider impact on their learning, right? If you involve them in a classroom discussion, if you actually throw a topic at them and ask them to talk to each other and discuss about it, right? So those are the some of the strategy can greatly impact your ability of teaching of your course to your student. Also, expertise developed. So those teaching faculty have been teaching their course for maybe last 20 years. Of course, they are better and they have developed the passion and they know how to utilize every single source in the classroom, right? And so that also good. Second thing also, instructors own lack of the confidence. So someone who just been hired to teach probably may not be very well versed with his teaching styles and his knowledge. So those are some of the factors that can greatly impact the teaching and the learning. And finally, the active learning, how you make your student independent thinker, how you make them to think about your course material, are also some of those strategy you can actually do, right? So with this one, I like to stop here, and then I'm going to see you in the next video. So in a continuation with the compounding factors that impact the teaching and the learning of anatomy, in my own investigation, I have investigated the two impacting factors that alters or impact the teaching and the learning of my anatomy course. So at the McEwen University and the Department of Health and the Human Sciences has a student-centered nursing curriculum. However, the teaching and the learning of anatomy is greatly impacted by the number of the instructional hours. And you can see for each of my anatomy and the physiology course, I use around 45 hours to teach. But out of the 45 hours, around 6 hours I use for delivering the exam of anatomy or the physiology, leaving only 26 hours for face-to-face instruction to my students. And so number of the hours are also impact the teaching and the learning of the anatomy course. And you probably know, as I said earlier, the amount of the time you spend face to face with a student can greatly impact their teaching and the learning of your course or the subject. Second impacting and the very interesting point or the factor is the class time. As you can see, the anatomy class that was held at 11 o'clock, the student has comparatively higher score in all three quizzes and the final exam compared to the student who had the class at 8 o'clock, indicating that the class time also impact the teaching and the learning. And this is true in the North America. All the classes start around 7:30 to 8 o'clock in the morning. And due to the severe winter conditions and also the long hours of the winter, sometimes students are not able to make it to the early morning class, and that also impact their class average or their academic performance, right? Sometimes they miss the ride, sometimes they not able to come on time, or sometimes if they are staying awake previous night, they just don't bother to come early morning for the class. And even if they come, they actually sleep in my class. So I have seen some of my students while I'm lecturing, I can see they're snoring right in front of me, which is very embarrassing, right? So this indicates that the class time does matter in terms of their academic performance. In fact, in America, most of the medical schools are now planning to have their class after 10 o'clock in the morning. However, this should not be an issue in India, because I remember most of the classes start mostly, after 10 a.m. in the morning too. Okay, all right. Now, what we have done so far, everyone, is that we looked at the knowledge acquisitions, its a transfer, retention, and the application in the second year. We also look at the number of the compounding factors that impact the teaching and the learning of anatomy or biosciences courses. We know that the student has a real difficulty to apply or retain the knowledge they have gained in the first year when they go into the second year or the consecutive years of their degree program. Now, as we know, there are potential gaps and their real problem. We wanted to overcome the knowledge retention problem by employing the number of the interventional strategy. And when it comes to talk about the interventional strategy, those strategy really depend upon from faculty to the faculty, and also number of the resources available in each university or in its faculty. In my knowledge retention project, I have attempted three interventional strategy to improve their knowledge acquisitions, its retention, and the application in the future classes. The first one is the use of the technology. Second is the use of the anatomical images in their exam. And the third one is employing online and in-class activities. So the data from this interventional strategy, I am going to talk in the next few minutes. Now, at the McEwen University, we are very fortunate to use the most modern, the latest, and the cutting edge teaching technology called three-dimensional virtual human cadaver, and it is called Anatomas table. We have purchased this table from the California, and this table comprise of the three two-dimensional images of the human body that are taken from actual human cadaver and transformed into the 3D images. So it actually gives what you call the true perception of the human body. And you can see right here, I'm standing here and I'm surrounded by students, and they are looking at the actual human body. Now, this is something you need to know, that using the anatomas table, you can isolate every single organ system and then study the structure and the function by using ultrasound, X-ray, MRI, CT scan. You are also able to rotate the entire body at a 360-degree angle and look at the various hue inside the body. You can isolate every single bone out of your body and look at the structure function by using X-ray, CT scan, MRI, ultrasound. You can pull out the liver and look at the histology of the liver and also identify the structure and the function. You can literally trace the blood flow through the entire vascular system, just the way the blood runs in your circulatory system. By using the online dissecting tool, you can cut the various sections through the brain to reveal the internal structure and the function of the various parts of the brain, right? So by using this anatomas table or the latest teaching technology, the data was collected on its uses, right? So the anatomy student that were taught with using the anatomas resulted in a significant higher class average compared to those anatomy students who were taught without anatomas in all three exams and the final final examination, indicating that use of the technology can improve the class average, their understanding, and also academic performance. Use of the anatomas also significantly improve their GPA, grade point average. The conclusion from this data shows that use of the teaching technology provide the true perception of the human body. They are able to see. Above all, it also stimulates the real life learning environment, because actual students are able to see the actual human body in front of them and relate their structure and the functions to the structure. Also, because the students are surrounded by the table, they actually pull out the muscles and talk over it. They can ask the questions to each other. They share the knowledge from each other. So that actually allows them to develop the social and the communication skill, which are very, very important. Number three, because the anatomas is comprised of the number of the body images, it also alter their cognition. So cognitions refers to the process of acquiring knowledge, understanding, and the perceiving the knowledge. So they are able to lower their cognitive load, but also it also help them to recall the anatomical knowledge. So if I'm asking the questions on one of those figure in their exam, they are able to remember or recall that figure and also recall the information. All right, next one, I'm going to talk about the images. So you probably know anatomy, biology, botany, zoology are some of those subjects which are comprised of the many images of the plant, animal, and the body, right? And the research has shown that the images can increase the visualization. Also, seeing the images in the exam, it actually help the student to reduce the exam anxiety and the stress. It also alter the cognitive load, which we just talked about. Having images allow the student to recall anatomical knowledge, and above all, if the students see the image, it also provide them a hint to answer. So using the images in my anatomy exam, the data from this experiment shows that the inclusion of the images or inclusion of the more images in the anatomy exam. You can actually see the exam number 1, exam number 2. So inclusion of the more images improve their class average significantly compared to the anatomy exam with lesser number of the images. So this indicates that inclusion of the images can improve their academic performance and also their actually class average. Now, when you actually look at the percent scoring of the individual questions based on the images, you can also see the class average was significantly higher of the questions that were actually based on the images compared to the questions without actually images. Again, these two figures or the graphs indicate that the inclusion of the images improve the visualization, reduces the exam anxiety and the stress, alter the cognitive load, and above all, it helped them to recall the anatomical knowledge and also provide the hint to an answer. So the takeaway message from this experiment to all of you out there is that try and include a lot more images in your exam, because the inclusion of the images provide them visualization, reduce the exam anxiety and the stress, and they are able to better recall the knowledge and also get the hint to the answer. Okay, last strategy that is actually I have employed in order to improve their class average, their retention, and the application are the impact of the online and in-class activities. And these are very important activities, everyone. So outside the class, I use what you actually call the online platform called Moodle or the Blackboard. And I'm not sure if in India, most of the university use these Moodles or the Blackboard, but this is the excellent platform for instructors and also for students, because this is where I put all my course material. Everyone, for every chapter, I put so much practice questions, so many practice questions. I put the YouTube video, I put the practice images, and also I put a lot of informations too. And that actually help them to actually, and the student can actually access the information when they are outside the class. I also put a lot of, what you call the muscles assignment. I put a lot of practice question. But when I am in front of them, I use the Kahoot quizzes. I use the in-class quizzes. So I deliver the few questions on the chapter I taught them. I also, at the end of the chapter, I also make up the small quiz and actually deliver that quiz right in the class. I include the class discussion where I group the whole class into the groups and then give them the topic on the certain areas. So, for example, if I'm teaching the cardiovascular system, I divide my whole class into the group and talk about what happened to the heart when somebody having heart attack or the stroke. So, with the continuation of the last interventional strategy to improve the class retention or knowledge retention and its application in the future classes, when I am in front of the students in the class, I use the Kahoot quizzes to assess their knowledge of the particular chapter. Also, at the end of the chapter, I also deliver a few questions in the form of the class quiz to my students, right? At the same time, when I'm teaching a class, quite often I do not teach the whole class. I pause and then divide the class into the many group and then pick up the topic. For example, if I'm teaching the cardiovascular system, I throw the questions at the student to discuss on the impact of the heart attack or stroke on the structure and the functions of the heart. and that also involve their engagement. Quite often, I print out some of those matching questions on the particular chapter which I taught earlier and then give it to all students. Divide, they are divided into the group and they actually talk to each other and then find out the right matching answer for those questions. Right? So the result from this in-class and online activities as presented in this graph clearly show that the class average of the student that were taught by using the in-class and the out-class activity significantly improved their class average in all three exams and also the final exam compared to those students who were taught without in-class and the in-class and the out-class activity. These activities also resulted in a significant increase in their GPA, indicating that the exposure of the anatomy students to the online and in-class activity can greatly improve their knowledge acquisition, perhaps their knowledge retention and its application in the future classes. And this is something you can also do. So for example, you don't have to use the sophisticated technology that I utilize in my classes, but you can use the YouTube videos. You can open up the YouTube videos and show some of those YouTube videos on your subject. You can also pull out the number of the sample questions from the internet or from your class, and you can use those one too. And when you are in the classroom, include a number of the in-class assessing activities to improve their participation, their engagement, and also their actually the class interaction. And it has a many advantages. For example, inclusion of those activities improve their academic performance because they basically divided into the group. They talk to each other and socialize, that improve the social and the communicating skill. They also promote the active learning because we actually do the passive learning. And so when you allow a student to talk and interact with each other, they become active learner. And that's why it is very important that your students should be independent thinker. Right? They develop the critical thinking, and because you're making your class so interesting and so interacting, they actually look forward to come in your class and to get engaged, to share the knowledge with each other and make up friends. And above all, they also able to retain that information or knowledge for a long-term time. So based on the data what I've shown is that in the conclusion, what I wanted to send the message out there is that it is very crucial for us to switch our what you call the passive learning to a student center and the evidence base. So that's mean you run the kind of the assess or use the certain kind of the intervention strategy and collect the data. And if that strategy help your student to retain the knowledge, and also they become good communicator and the critical thinker, use that as an experiment for your future classes and spread that message to other faculties, right? So at the end of the day, we are there to improve the knowledge of your courses and the subject to our future students, right? And that using those strategies, it can actually help them to engage in the classroom, help them to retain the knowledge, develop the social and the communication skill, develop the critical thinking, and also help them to reduce the exam anxiety and the stress. And so with this conclusion, I wanted to conclude my presentation here. But before I conclude, I wanted to thank you to GVISH for giving me an honor to present my research work. It has been a huge honor to know each and every one of you at the faculty at the GVISS. I also wanted to thank each and every one of you who have been listening to my talk for your time and also your actually the effort to attend my presentation. And finally, I wanted to conclude my presentation here, and I will be more than happy to answer your questions. You can address your questions through this email, and also those who are looking to start up the research in the teaching, I can be available to help you out, whether it's a immunology research or it's a teaching research. I will be at your service whenever you wanted to through the email or through the telephonic conversation. So again, thank you so much for giving me a great opportunity to interact with you, to basically interact with you and be a part of your e-conference. That's all. So thank you so much, and I wish you all a great academic endeavor and also a great uh, time, and also have a good day. Thank you so much.